They say money can't buy love, but in my case, it sure did, because my girlfriend left me for a guy who had more of it. What she didn't know was that karma always finds its way back. And this? This is the story of how it all unraveled. What would you do if someone you loved chose wealth over you? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to know your take. And hey, if you're into real-life relationship stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is Wild Love Story, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. My name's Ryan. I'm 32 years old, from Austin, Texas. For most of my life, I thought I had it all figured out, especially when it came to love. I met Lisa when I was in college. She was everything I thought I could ever want, brilliant, driven, and, honestly, way out of my league. From the very first time we talked, I knew this was different. We clicked instantly. And over the years, we built a life together that I thought was unbreakable. 8 years of dreams, plans, and, I'll admit, some struggles. But through it all, I was certain of one thing: Lisa was my person. But relationships, as I learned the hard way, aren't always as solid as they seem. I remember the early days like it was yesterday. Back then, it wasn't about fancy dinners or luxury vacations. We built something simple, something real. Late night talks about our future, laughing about silly things, and sharing everything we had, even when we didn't have much. I supported her through everything. When she was overwhelmed with school, I was there. When she wanted to chase her dream job, I was there. And when she needed help paying off some debts, yeah, I was there too. So imagine my surprise when I started to feel like something was off. I never thought the woman I loved would trade everything we built for something as empty as money. But she did. And it all started on one unforgettable day. That day changed everything. And looking back, I realized the signs were there all along. In the beginning, everything was perfect. You know those couples you see and think, wow, they're made for each other. That was us. Or at least, that's how it felt. We weren't just a couple, we were a team. We used to stay up late, talking about our dreams. She had this way of lighting up when she talked about her future: a beautiful house with a wraparound porch, a big yard where our kids could play, and even a golden retriever she wanted to name Charlie. She had it all mapped out. And you know what? I wanted nothing more than to make those dreams come true for her. I can still hear her voice sometimes, whispering about the life we'd build together. Names for our kids, little details about our wedding, it all felt so real, so close. Like we could reach out and grab it if we just worked hard enough. And work hard we did. Pause slightly, tone becomes more thoughtful. But it wasn't just about the big dreams. It was the little things, too. Friday nights binge-watching bad movies, lazy Sunday mornings making pancakes in our tiny apartment, laughing about whose turn it was to do the dishes. Those moments mattered just as much, maybe even more. They were the glue that held us together, or so I thought. Lisa wasn't just my partner, she was my priority. I was there for her through everything. When she doubted herself, I reminded her of her strength. When she felt like giving up, I was the one who pushed her to keep going. And when she struggled financially, I didn't hesitate to step in. There was this one time, she'd been stressing over a student loan payment. She didn't ask, but I offered to help. It wasn't easy for me either, I didn't have much to spare. But seeing her smile, seeing that weight lifted off her shoulders, it was worth every penny. She used to say, "Ryan, I don't know what I'd do without you." And I believed her. I believed we were unbreakable. But looking back, maybe I gave too much. Maybe I made her life too easy. It's not something you realize in the moment. You just think you're doing what you're supposed to, being there for the person you love. But Lisa was always ambitious. That was one of the things I loved about her. She had these big dreams and this drive to achieve them. At first, I admired it. But over time, I started to notice something. She cared a lot about appearances, what people thought of her, how she looked, how we looked as a couple. There was this one day, I'll never forget it. We were at a friend's wedding, and Lisa spent more time talking about how the bride's dress wasn't designer enough, than enjoying the actual ceremony. I remember joking, "Good thing I didn't invite you to my cousin's backyard wedding." But instead of laughing, she just gave me this look, like she wasn't joking anymore. I shrugged it off. Thought it was harmless. After all, everyone wants nice things, right? But then, there were other moments. Subtle, but they added up. She started obsessing over social media, posting pictures of fancy dinners, tagging herself at trendy places, even when we couldn't really afford it. "It's just for fun," she'd say. But I couldn't help feeling like it was more than that. Like she was trying to create this image of a life we didn't really have. And maybe that should have been my first warning sign. Then she started spending more time at work. Late nights, business dinners, events where I wasn't invited. At first, I thought nothing of it. She was just working hard, right? But then, one name kept coming up. Jason. I didn't know much about him, just that he was one of her coworkers. But the way she talked about him, the way she laughed at his jokes, even when she was just repeating them to me, it was different. And once I noticed it, I couldn't unsee it. I tried to push it out of my mind. Told myself I was being paranoid. But deep down, I knew. Jason wasn't just a coworker. And I had no idea how much worse it was about to get. At first, it was little things, things you wouldn't notice unless you were looking. Lisa would cancel our date nights last minute, saying she was too tired or had to finish something for work. It started happening more often, and the excuses always sounded plausible, but they left a sour taste in my mouth. Then, she stopped saying, "I love you," as much. I didn't even notice at first. It was gradual. One day I realized I was saying it more than she was, and when she did respond, it felt empty. Like it was out of habit, not from the heart. That's when I started paying closer attention. One night, I saw her sitting on the couch, texting someone. She had this smile, one of those real, genuine smiles that I hadn't seen in weeks. My stomach twisted. I asked her, "What's so funny?" She just shrugged and said it was a work thing. A work thing. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her phone lighting up with another text, her laughing at something I wasn't a part of. The doubt had planted itself in my mind, and it started growing fast. It came to a head a few days later. She was getting ready for another work event, and I couldn't keep it in any longer. I asked her straight out, "Is there someone else?" She froze. For a moment, she didn't even turn around. Then she laughed, but it wasn't her usual laugh, it was forced, defensive. "Ryan, that's ridiculous," she said. But her face told me everything I needed to know. After that, things got even colder between us. She didn't deny my accusations outright anymore, but she didn't reassure me either. It was like she was just waiting for me to figure it out. And I did. One of her friends, someone I'd always thought was loyal to both of us, told me the truth. She didn't mean to, I think, but it slipped out. She said something about Lisa and Jason going out to dinner. When I pressed her, she admitted it wasn't the first time. It was Jason. Her rich coworker. The guy she'd been talking about so much lately. The guy she'd been texting and laughing with. The guy who wasn't me. I can't describe what that moment felt like. It was like everything I'd built my life around had just been ripped away. Lisa wasn't just my girlfriend, she was my future, my plans, my person. And now, she was someone else's. For a few days, I didn't say anything to her. I couldn't. I needed time to process it. But eventually, I confronted her again. This time, I didn't ask, I told her I knew. And she didn't even try to deny it. She just said, "I'm sorry, Ryan." That was it. No explanation, no excuses. Just, sorry. She moved out 2 weeks later. Packed up her things while I was at work, left her key on the kitchen counter, and walked out of my life. Just like that. I was left with nothing but memories, and an anger I'd never felt before. It wasn't just anger at her. It was anger at myself for not seeing it sooner, for letting her take so much of me. And that anger, it didn't just sit there. It started to grow. But I wasn't going to let this end here. No, I was going to make sure she regretted leaving me. I didn't know how yet, but I knew one thing for sure, Jason wasn't untouchable, and neither was she. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. But before I could think about what came next, I had to face what was happening to me right then. Lisa's betrayal didn't just hurt, it broke me. It felt like my whole life had been ripped apart, and I didn't know how to put the pieces back together. I spiraled. For weeks, I barely ate. Food didn't taste like anything anymore, and honestly, I didn't care. I'd sit on the couch staring at the same shows I used to watch with Lisa, but I wasn't really watching. I was just, existing. Going through the motions. My job didn't feel real anymore either. I'd show up late, leave early, and barely get anything done in between. My coworkers noticed. One of them even pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Ryan, are you okay?" I nodded, lied, and said I was fine. But I wasn't fine. I was nowhere close. There were nights where I thought about giving up on everything, not just love, but life itself. I'd lie awake wondering if maybe this was it, if maybe this was all I was meant for. To love someone, lose them, and fade away. But somehow, even in my lowest moments, there was this small voice in the back of my head that wouldn't let me quit. It said, "Ryan, this isn't you. You're better than this." At first, I ignored it. I didn't want to believe it. But slowly, that voice got louder. And then one day, something clicked. I remember it vividly. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at a photo of Lisa and me from a vacation we took years ago. We looked so happy in that picture, like nothing could ever touch us. And for the first time, I didn't feel sad looking at it, I felt angry. Why should her betrayal define me? Why should she have that power over my life? She moved on, so why couldn't I? That was the moment I decided to take control of my life again. It wasn't easy. The first thing I did was delete every photo of Lisa from my phone. Not because I wanted to forget her, I knew I never could, but because I didn't want her ghost haunting me anymore. Then I cleaned out the apartment. Every little thing that reminded me of her, her favorite mug, the blanket she always curled up with, I packed it up and threw it out. I started small. I made a list of things I needed to do, things I used to care about before Lisa became my whole world. I started hitting the gym, not to impress anyone, but to feel stronger in my own skin. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. And slowly, day by day, I started to feel like myself again. It wasn't just about moving on, it was about rebuilding. I realized that everything I'd poured into Lisa, I'd stopped pouring into myself. And for the first time in years, I started to ask myself, what do I want? What makes me happy? It was a question I hadn't thought about in a long time. And as I worked on myself, something else happened. People started noticing. My friends said I seemed different, stronger, more focused. My coworkers started respecting me again. And deep down, I knew they were right. I was different. And I wasn't done yet. But here's the thing, while I was working on myself, I stumbled upon something. Something that would change everything. It wasn't planned. It wasn't even something I was looking for. But once I found it, I knew it was the key to getting back what I'd lost, and maybe even more. And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about moving on. This was about making sure Lisa and Jason understood exactly what they had done to me. And I wasn't going to stop until they did. That realization became my fuel. I wasn't just going to sit back and hope life got better, I was going to make it better. I had spent so much time pouring everything into Lisa that I forgot what it felt like to take care of myself. That was about to change. I channeled all the pain, the anger, and the frustration into building a better version of me. First, I focused on my health. I signed up for a gym membership and started going every single day. At first, it was just to get out of the house, to have something to do. But soon, it became more than that. The weights didn't just make me stronger physically, they gave me a sense of control again. Every rep, every drop of sweat felt like a step closer to reclaiming myself. Then I turned to my career. For years, I had coasted through my job, content to just do enough to get by. But not anymore. I started showing up early, staying late, and taking on projects I'd never have touched before. People noticed. My boss noticed. And within a few months, I went from being just another employee to someone people looked up to. I even reconnected with old friends, the kind of friends who don't care about how much money you make or what kind of car you drive. We'd grab a beer, talk about everything and nothing, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like myself again. It was like I was rediscovering the person I used to be before Lisa became my whole world. But it wasn't just about rebuilding, it was about growth. I started reading more, learning new skills, and even launched a side business I'd been thinking about for years. It wasn't much at first, just a small project to keep me busy. But it grew, slowly but surely, and every little success felt like a victory, not just over the business, but over everything I'd been through. I was becoming someone I could be proud of. And that's when it happened, when the next piece of the puzzle fell into place. It started with something small. I was scrolling through social media one evening, minding my own business, when a post caught my eye. It was Lisa. She had posted a picture of herself and Jason at some fancy event, black tie, champagne glasses, the whole 9 yards. But it wasn't the picture that got me. It was the caption, "Building the life we deserve." Building the life we deserve. Those words stayed with me. They weren't just a slap in the face, they were a challenge. And I wasn't about to back down. I started looking into Jason. Not obsessively, just enough to satisfy my curiosity. At first, it was all the surface-level stuff you'd expect. The guy looked perfect on paper, successful, wealthy, respected in his field. But the deeper I dug, the more cracks I found. Turns out, Jason wasn't as perfect as he seemed. His wealth? It wasn't entirely clean. There were whispers of shady deals, of people he'd screwed over to get ahead. And once I knew where to look, it didn't take long to find the proof. It was small things at first, an article here, a post there. But together, they painted a picture of someone who had climbed to the top by stepping on everyone else. And for the first time in months, I felt something other than anger. I felt an opportunity. Because now, I had something he didn't. I had the truth. And I knew exactly how to use it. But this wasn't just about Jason. This was about Lisa, too. The woman who left me, who betrayed me, who thought she could build a better life without consequences. They had no idea what was coming for them. I wasn't just going to rebuild my life. I was going to make sure they both knew exactly what they'd done. And I wasn't going to stop until they regretted every single choice that led them here. Revenge isn't something you rush into. It has to be planned, calculated. And for it to work, every single move has to be perfect. I couldn't risk them finding out, not until it was too late. So I took my time. I started with Jason. I knew his public persona, successful businessman, philanthropist, all-around golden boy. But I also knew that nobody gets to the top without making enemies. And Jason had plenty. It just took a little digging to find them. I started with public records. It's amazing how much you can learn about someone just by looking through what's publicly available. I found his company filings, his business history, even a few lawsuits that had been swept under the rug. Most of it was harmless, things any successful person might deal with. But then I found something interesting. A name. A name that kept coming up over and over again, Daniel. Daniel was one of Jason's former business partners. They had started a company together years ago, but something happened, and Daniel was forced out. The details weren't clear, but from what I could piece together, it wasn't amicable. Jason had crushed him, legally and financially. And Daniel wasn't the only one. There were others. Small businesses that had gone under after Jason's companies got involved. Employees who had been fired under suspicious circumstances. Deals that fell apart, always with Jason walking away unscathed while everyone else took the hit. It was a pattern, and it wasn't hard to see that Jason had built his empire by stepping on people like Daniel. I started reaching out to these people. Carefully. Quietly. I wasn't trying to stir up trouble, not yet. I just wanted to know more. And the more I learned, the clearer the picture became. Jason wasn't just ruthless, he was dirty. He cut corners, broke rules, and left a trail of destruction in his wake. And I knew I could use that. But gathering information was just the first step. If I wanted to make Jason pay, I had to set the perfect trap. Something he wouldn't see coming. Something he couldn't resist. And that's exactly what I did. I created a fake opportunity, a business deal that was too good to pass up. It wasn't easy. I had to make it look real, credible. I set up a fake company, complete with a website, social media profiles, even a team of fake employees. I made sure everything was perfect, down to the smallest detail. And then I dangled it in front of him. The offer was simple, a chance to invest in a lucrative new venture with exclusive rights to a technology that didn't even exist. But the way I presented it, it seemed revolutionary. And Jason? He took the bait. Hook, line, and sinker. From the first email to the final contract, everything was under my control. I watched as Jason poured time and money into what he thought was the deal of a lifetime. I fed him just enough information to keep him interested but not enough for him to figure out the truth. Every move he made was part of my plan, and he didn't even realize it. And it wasn't just about Jason. Lisa was there, too, standing by his side, supporting him every step of the way. She thought she'd traded up, that she'd left behind a loser for a man who could give her the world. But she had no idea the world she was stepping into was one I had built just for them. Everything was going perfectly. Too perfectly, in fact. I could see it all coming together, the trap closing in on Jason, the look on Lisa's face when she realized what was happening. But then something happened. Something I didn't expect. Something that changed everything. And what happened next was even more shocking than I imagined. The trap had been set, and Jason was falling for it. Every email, every meeting, every dollar he poured into this fake deal only tightened the noose around him. It was almost too easy, watching someone so confident, so sure of his own power, walk straight into the web I had spun. I waited for the right moment. Timing was everything. If I moved too soon, he might figure out what was happening. But if I waited too long, I risked losing control. So I picked the perfect moment to pull the rug out from under him. It started with an anonymous tip, something Jason couldn't ignore. He received an email, supposedly from a whistleblower, exposing the deal he was investing in. It painted a picture of corruption, of legal risks, of everything Jason feared most. And just like that, the cracks in his empire began to show. At first, Jason tried to cover it up. He sent lawyers, tried to silence anyone who questioned him. But the more he pushed, the more questions people started to ask. His business partners began to distance themselves. Clients started pulling out of deals. And the media? Oh, they loved it. Stories about Jason's shady practices started flooding the news. His reputation was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Every move he made only made things worse. It was like watching a domino effect, one piece falling after another, faster and faster until everything came crashing down. And Lisa? She was right there in the middle of it. The woman who thought she'd traded up, who thought she'd left behind a man who couldn't give her what she wanted, was now scrambling to pick up the pieces of a life that was falling apart. She stood by Jason, at least at first. But as things got worse, I started hearing whispers. Whispers that she wasn't as loyal as she seemed. But here's the thing about revenge, it never goes exactly the way you plan. Just when I thought everything was going perfectly, I got a call. It was Lisa. I wasn't expecting it. I didn't even know she still had my number. But there she was, calling me out of the blue. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe she meant to call Jason or one of her friends. But when I picked up, she said my name, Ryan, it's me. Can we talk? I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hang up right then and there. But another part of me, maybe out of curiosity, maybe something else, wanted to hear what she had to say. So I stayed on the line. She sounded different. Not the confident, ambitious Lisa I used to know. She sounded desperate. Broken. She started talking about how everything was falling apart, how Jason wasn't the man she thought he was, how she felt like her whole world was crumbling around her. And then she said something I'll never forget, I made a mistake, Ryan. I should never have left you. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Was this what I wanted? Was this the revenge I had been chasing all along? To hear her admit she was wrong, that she regretted leaving me? Or was it something else entirely? I didn't respond right away. I couldn't. 1,000 thoughts were racing through my mind, but one question stood out above all the rest: why now? Why was she calling me, of all people, after everything that had happened? And what did she really want? Her words caught me off guard and made me question everything I had done, everything I thought I wanted, and everything I had planned to do next. I'll be honest, after that phone call, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend she never called. But another part of me, maybe the part that had been chasing closure for so long, needed to see her, to face her one last time. We agreed to meet at a small cafe, the kind of place we used to go to when we were together. When I walked in, I saw her sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She looked different, not in the physical sense, but there was something in her eyes, something I hadn't seen before. She looked lost. I sat down, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us was heavy with everything that had happened, with all the things we hadn't said to each other. Finally, she broke the silence. Ryan, she said, her voice trembling, I owe you an apology. She started talking, and once she started, it was like she couldn't stop. She told me how she had thought Jason was everything she wanted, how his success, his wealth, his lifestyle had seemed like the answer to all her dreams. But now, she realized it was all a facade. She said he wasn't the man she thought he was, that he had lied to her, manipulated her, used her. And now that his empire was falling apart, she was left picking up the pieces of a life that wasn't even hers to begin with. Then she looked at me, and with tears in her eyes, she said, I made a mistake, Ryan. I should never have left you. You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I didn't see it until it was too late. I listened to her, but the whole time, I couldn't shake one thought: where was this Lisa when I needed her? Where was this honesty, this regret, when she was walking out the door and into Jason's life? And as much as I wanted to let her words sink in, as much as a part of me wanted to believe them, I couldn't. I looked her in the eye and said, Lisa, I appreciate your apology. But I've moved on. The words felt heavy, final, but they were true. I had spent so much time chasing revenge, chasing closure, but now I realized I didn't need her apology. I didn't need her regret. What I needed was to let go, and in that moment, I did. Walking away from that cafe felt like shedding the weight of the past. For so long, I thought revenge would give me closure, that seeing Lisa and Jason pay for what they'd done would fill the void they left behind. And in a way, it did. But the real victory wasn't about them, it was about me. Revenge felt good, don't get me wrong. Watching Jason's empire crumble, seeing Lisa realize the mistake she'd made, it was satisfying. But it wasn't the thing that healed me. What healed me was finding myself again, realizing that I was more than the man Lisa left behind. I had spent so much of my life defining myself through her, through us. But now, for the first time in years, I was defining myself through me. My career was thriving, my side business was growing, and my relationships, with friends, with family, with myself, were stronger than ever. I had built a life that I was proud of, a life that didn't depend on anyone else to feel complete. Looking back, I realized that losing Lisa wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me, it was the best. It forced me to grow, to change, to become the person I am today. And for that, I'm grateful. But that's not the end of the story. Because karma wasn't done with Lisa yet. After our meeting, I thought I'd put everything behind me. But then, a few weeks later, I got another call. This time, it wasn't from Lisa. It was from someone I never expected, with news that would turn everything I thought I knew upside down. And what they told me? It changed everything. It was Daniel. Remember him? Jason's former business partner, the one Jason had betrayed and left in ruins. I never thought I'd hear from him directly, but there he was, calling me out of the blue. He said he'd heard whispers about Jason's downfall, about the deals unraveling and the media circus surrounding him. And somehow, he'd traced some of it back to me. I wasn't sure what to expect, but Daniel wasn't calling to accuse me. No, he wanted to thank me. He said that watching Jason's empire crumble had given him something he thought he'd never get, justice. He told me about how Jason's actions had ruined his life, how he'd spent years trying to rebuild from nothing. And now, thanks to what I'd started, he finally felt like he could move on. Hearing that made me realize something. Revenge might have started as a way to heal my own pain, but in the end, it became something bigger. It wasn't just about me. It was about all the people Jason and Lisa had hurt along the way. And knowing that I had helped them find some measure of peace. That was more satisfying than anything else. I'm not saying revenge is the answer for everyone. It's not. It's messy, it's complicated, and it doesn't always go the way you expect. But what I've learned is this, no matter how bad things seem, you can always turn pain into power. You can take what's broken and use it to build something stronger, something better. So now I want to ask you, what would you have done in my situation? Would you have walked away? Fought back? Or maybe done something completely different? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you love real-life stories like this one, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This is Wild Love Story, and trust me, there are plenty more stories where this one came from. You won't want to miss what's next. Life has a funny way of surprising you, of taking what seems like the end and turning it into a new beginning. I thought losing Lisa was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But now, I see it as the start of something so much bigger. And who knows, maybe the same is true for you. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.